It was not only the return of Godzilla, but it's also the return of the Godzilla NECA line on the channel. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and after a decade, nearly a decade, of doing this hobby, we finally have another NECA Godzilla to review. I know previously, earlier this year, well actually like 2 months ago actually, we did the NECA 2003 Hyper Maser Blast Godzilla, which was one of the last NECA figures they released for the line. This one is one of the first, actually the third they ever released. Because first there was the 2014, then there was the 1994, and now there's 1985, which I know it's technically the 1984, but this figure is called the 1985 Godzilla, so that's what I'm going to be calling it. Anyways, this figure has been a long time coming for me and the channel, and today we're going to be doing a 2025 updated review, even though I haven't really reviewed this before. Look at this old figure, which was in its box since 2014. So that said, does it really stand up to the figures of today, or is it really as outdated as the line presents itself considering its reissue? Let's find out. So before we end up doing the actual, basic sculpt and paint, articulation, size, accessories, whatever, it's worth at least bringing up or mentioning the pretty big prototype elephant in the room. And I'm not talking about that 2-foot tall Goliath there. We need to talk about the prototype, which, if you guys don't know, I'll throw a picture of it on screen. There was a prototype revealed, I think at either New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con, I don't remember which one it was, of that year, where they unveiled the 1985 prototype, and it had severe backlash online. NECA fans, collectors alike, they were not happy with that prototype. So NECA actually listened to the complaints and went back and did a whole new head sculpt, which, props to NECA for being one of the few companies out there that listen to fan feedback. They've always been this way, and this is proof of it. Now, despite the new head sculpt, there is a lot of things that we need to take a look at, so let's go ahead and take a look at them. Starting off with the sculpt and paint for the head, it's clear that the NECA artists and the sculptors decided to really lock in. And I know I'm using a modern day expression for a figure that's over a decade old, but I'm still going to do it. Anyway, so this head, of course, is based on the film version and not whatever they were trying to do with that previous head and make it look like Ghidorah mixed with Minya. This head looks severely better. For the eyes, we actually have a lot of nice detail work here for the eyes themselves, having a black pupil, kind of like a brown iris, and a more eggshell white kind of like eyeball, which just looks a lot better, and even still holds up to this day. They are a little bit bugged out like they were in the movie, so that's a plus, but they're also like a little bit more to the front like that, so they do have like an automated expression, which I do like. For the actual detail work, we can see a lot of the nice like overall like bumps and ridges, and it has a very nice like overall look to it, especially the new head sculpt they gave it. I mean, can I really call it new? I'm gonna call it new. The actual paint, however, that's where like some issues had initially arisen, because NECA at the time was known for giving their figures very glossy paint jobs or finishes, and this guy was the next victim of that. And as you can see, he definitely has the gloss all across, not only his face, but just the outright body. But the actual skin tone does utilize like kind of like a blue wash, which is very nicely done, especially on his eyebrows, which are very prominent. The actual top spines here are painted, and they do look very nice, and I'm very pleased with them. For the actual mouth, it's kind of like, get in there. The teeth are a little too yellow for my liking, because while they do look very nice as far as the teeth are concerned, like the actual teeth, the lining around it just looks a little too yellow. almost looks like the color scheme of Bendy and the Ink Machine, even though that game wouldn't come out for another few years before this figure did. So there is that. However, what is very nice to say is that the mouth paint just looks really nice. You look at it and it's super detailed and like super like very flaky almost. I don't know, looks almost dry, which is weird to say because it is the mouth, but the tongue looks also very well done and actually has a nice little outline of the kind of like a darker black to help separate the pink and the tongue from itself. So there you go. That's essentially the new head. For the jaw itself, there you go. A little bit of blue highlights and a lot of nice little texturing. That looks great. Coming down to the neck, we actually have like some folds in the skin and actually makes it look more like the suit. What I like about that folds is that they're actually highlighted with the blue, so they do look very nice. The dorsal plates back here, there's only like one row, and they are painted pretty basically, not too much to write home about. I remember the reissue had like more dorsal plates, but this is the original variant, so it's not going to have that. For the actual torso here, very like circular detail work here with the blue, and I do like how it looks personally. I've always been a fan of the blue. You know, it's very rare that Godzilla has any colors beyond blue, what he glows. So actually him using the blue to him looks really nice. Maybe not so much movie accurate, but it does look very nice to me. And adds at least like a lot more definition as opposed to just being just a plain charcoal gray. But for the actual like detail, it's very well detailed. I do like how the bumps and the crevices are on the body. As for the arms, they kind of look like sleeves. Now, I know that's kind of technically what they were, you know, being a guy in a suit. But I don't know. Something just feels off about, like, how they are proportioned. Godzilla has always had small arms, but I feel like this was a little too small for Godzilla 85. And, but the blue itself here does lend itself at least the most that it can, minus all the bumps and ridges. The claw paint, however, it still does continue like that kind of like yellow to bone shell, like, or eggshell white, almost like a little bit of a duller yellow. So there is that. But as you can see, the finger positions, the middle finger here is actually like clumped with the pointer finger. I wonder if that's actually like perma-attached. Anyway, for the spines, very questionable here. I get it. It was their third time doing the spines. But I have to ask, what went wrong here? And I don't mean this in the sense of like, oh, well, this was just, again, their third time. But let me show you. This figure, the NECA 94, was released a little bit earlier than the 85 does. Now, my 94 has been severely destroyed by my younger self because I was an idiot and I didn't take good care of my action figures. But the overall core dorsal plate molds are still there. You see the black on the outline and the frosted white tips on the outside. This is how it should look. Not to mention, they're big, puffy dorsal plates like how they were in the film. The 85 didn't have the biggest fins, but I feel like this was not the way to do it. I know, I'm critiquing a figure that they later improved, but this is the figure that I have. This is what I'm going to be critiquing. And a lot of it has to stem from really the fact that the paint just doesn't lend itself well. Because here, like, for example, there's a lot of the blue. Like, more than it should be. And it kind of overshadows the black base. Like, I don't know what's going on here. I mean, I'll admit the coloring on the exterior of the fins looks fine. But it's if the circular parts, like inside, looked a little better, then that would be fine. But it also doesn't help that the fins themselves are just so flimsy. Like, I always knew they were flimsy, but I didn't realize how flimsy. So I have to ask, what happened between this and this. Maybe I should have gotten the reissue, but I got this thing mainly for nostalgia's sake, but I'm putting like a more critical eyes on it. So yeah, not exactly a fan of the dorsal plates, but the actual thighs here, again, more or less feature the same thing as the body does, having the blue highlights here with all the folds in the skin, big meaty thighs, because 85 did have some very big meaty thighs in the film, so at least they kept that. The knees here, a little bit bent on this one, but you keep the blue going, and as well as the small feet, as you can see here, which actually do look very nice. I do like the way the feet look here. Very blue, very shiny finish. Almost looks like you came out of the water, honestly. And yeah, I just do appreciate the way that the claws are painted here, because they do have like the orange there, almost acting like extra detail work. That's something I have to commend NECA there for. And for the tail, it's nothing particularly long. It's actually like a little shorter than the 94. Yeah, it's a tad bit shorter than the 94, but still of serviceable length. Of course, we have the painted segments here for the spines, which were never really that great to begin with. My heater's about to turn back on. And yeah, it just has a little bit of a imbalance, because you see a little bit more white on this one than compared to this one, which almost looks like a crown. And then you get a little bit more, at least they're still painted. And of course you have the detail underneath, which still has the blue highlights. And yeah, that is basically about it as far as the sculpt and paint is concerned. Is it weird criticizing a 11-year-old figure for the way it looks, despite the fact that the same company would later reissue a better one? Yes, it is. But again, this is critiquing the figure through a modern eyes, not to mention just taking an upgraded look at this thing. That said, I do see how this could be considered the weakest, because in terms of the sculpt and paint overall, what do I think of it? I think that this sculpt and paint is actually pretty good for the most part. I do like the blue they used, mainly because that is just my personal bias, but actually speaking on behalf of the blue, it is spread out where the folds are, and I do appreciate that level of detail. I also do like the fact that they featured the new head sculpt, and I do like the fact that they also have pretty good sculpted details overall. However, it's things like the proportions that don't really seem to line up with me. For example, the dorsal plates. I don't understand what happened with that, even when the figure first released. The arms, a little too skinny and small, even for 85. The lower legs could be a little thicker, and I don't really have any complaints about the tail, aside from the paints of the dorsal plates that are on the tail. But even then, those are like really small, minute, and again, they'd fix all these. So in terms of sculpt and paint, I'm thinking 7.5 out of 10 is fair. Because, I'm kind of considering on that. You know what? I'm going to bump that out to a 7, just because I do feel like, again, this is one of the weaker ones. But it's still at least a serviceable 85 design. For articulation, we have a hinged jaw, so you can open up pretty far, close back up, although do keep in mind that the teeth may scrape up against each other. For the head, we can go up, down, a little up and down, I should probably clarify, and we can go left and right. We can turn pretty much all the way around. What's fun is that because there's a little bit of a gap between the jaw and the neck, you can actually open up the jaw to hide it. You can also do that with the NES Godzilla too, because the two do share the same mold. For the neck, we can also get a ball joint movement, so we can go full 360. And it's kind of funny because unlike the NES Godzilla, this Godzilla does not have its thing like stuck, its neck joint stuck, because it did happen with mine a few years ago. And as in a few, I mean like nearly a decade ago. Shoulders can go up, out to the side, in, can go forward and back a little bit. I don't want to like force any joints just because this is a newer figure in terms of like being opened. It can go You can bend at the elbow, straighten out, and can rotate. The wrist can also rotate as well, and it is on a ball joint. Something I've noticed that the reissues would also have a swivel hinge for the wrist, as well as a lot more of like the later NECA Godzillas. The waist here, not so much up and down, but you can get some side to side and tilt. Because the spines are made of like a rubbery material, they are going to collide in and get some like scrapes, but you don't have to worry about the sculpt itself degrading over time. The thighs here can go forward and backwards, as well go in and out if you really wanted to. The knee can bend and rotate here. Ball joint here for the foot can go full 360 degrees. And of course, for the tail, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ball joints from here to here. And from here to here is going to be a pure bendy wire, but I'm not going to bend it because who knows how brittle that thing is. Also, just keep in mind that unless you have it fully like reared up, you could get some gappage between the dorsal plates. So overall, for articulation, it's pretty much a basic NECA Godzilla. I mean, all NECA figures practically share the exact same articulation, save for a few exceptions like the Shin Godzilla and such for not having jaw articulation, the Spitfire version specifically. But this figure still has a good range of articulation, and I am kind of shocked that NECA was able to put this much into the design considering. That said, especially like if you've loosened yours over time, it'll definitely have a lot more freedom with it, unlike this one where I literally just got it out of the box a few days ago. But that said, still a very nice articulated NECA Godzilla. If I had a few complaints, I would probably say just give it a bit more like hunt movement. And I do have a bit of a QC issue with my right knee because it does not want to move. But aside from that, it's pretty serviceable. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10 for the articulation. And considering this fact that this guy does not come with any accessories, here he is compared next to his repaint, the NECA NES Godzilla from Monster Monsters, which, for anyone confused, essentially NECA decided to make a video game appearance of Godzilla and decided to use 84 as the base. If that's accurate or not, that is up for you to decide because that is a video game sprite, and that's kind of hard to say, oh, it's that version of Godzilla, despite the fact that it's not necessarily based on any specific version of Godzilla, even at the time. So, for the actual base paint, essentially everything is the exact same sculpt-wise, say except for the new dorsal plates that this guy got. Also, this is a very used copy. This was the second ever Godzilla figure I got, so you'll see scuffage there, the works. In fact, a few joints have even broken on mine. Wait, which foot was it was this one, okay. So aside from the actual mold, the main differences are going to be the colorization in the middle row of dorsal plates. The actual exterior rows, those are going to be the same, mold-wise. Even the reissue of the 84, they went back with those new dorsal plates and gave them to the NES Godzilla. So it's almost like I'm seeing in a mirror. Yeah, crazy, right? It's funny because both of them are kind of blue and black, at least in some different ways. So aside from that, they're realistically about the same, like as far as the sculpt is concerned. Just to kind of showcase them all around. As you can see here. It's nice. And yeah, that is basically about all there is to say. Aside from the articulation difference, well, there isn't any articulation differences. I wonder if the reissue of this guy actually does have the hinged hands. I actually don't know. So for some size comparisons, here he is compared next to the first two NECA Godzillas prior to him, with the NECA 2014 and the NECA 1994. And might I say, it's so good to finally have this trio. If there's any trio of action figures I want, it's these three. These are the three OGs. I'd have also loved this thing as a kid, but considering what happened to my video game Godzilla, yeah, it's probably for the best that I got this thing as an adult. And here he is compared next to some other NECA Godzilla releases, with the 1995 Burning Godzilla and the 2019 V1 from Godzilla King of the Monsters. And here he is, and you're going to consider me sad for this, the only two other 1985 or 1984 Godzillas that I have in my collection, with the minifigure from the blind bags by Bandai and the Funko Pop Godzilla 1984 as part of the 70th anniversary set. Which, funny enough, I'm still missing Shin Godzilla. Maybe I might get around to him one day. And here he is compared next to the 89 Godzilla, which would be his sequel, which we have the original release, 1989, and the Biollante Bile Attack repaint from also NECA Toys. And it's so fun seeing just how much NECA improved from this to this, despite them being essentially the same Godzilla. Maybe not the same design, but the same incarnation. And finally, here he is compared next to the previous NECA Godzilla purchase that I made, the 2003 Hyper Maser Blast variant, and the Biollante MMS bootleg. So, about the closest thing enemy-wise to him, because I don't own a Super X, so don't even ask. And I probably won't, at least for the foreseeable future. And so overall, moving this a little bit to the side here, what do I think of this figure? I think this figure is actually pretty good. He's not one of my favorites as far as quality is concerned. I probably should have gotten the reissue, but at the same time, I'd be missing out on this guy, because I do like my NECA Godzillas. Is he serviceable as a 1985 articulated Godzilla figure? Yes. And he's also, I guess technically, if you want to count them as separate releases, one of two highly articulated 85 figures currently on the market, because Heisei Toys nor Monster Arts still has yet to make one. NECA is the only high articulated action figure company that has ever made an 85, let alone two of them. This version and the re-release in the new poster box style packaging. So that said, do I recommend this one in particular? If you want that wave of nostalgia, I'd say so. If you want a good quality 85, I'd recommend just sticking with the reissue. Even though the reissue can cost a lot of money these days, at this point, it's either that or nothing. That said, I personally give this NECA Godzilla a final score of 7 out of 10. It's the weaker side of the NECA Godzilla spectrum, but it's still a serviceable 85 nonetheless, and I do think that at the very bare minimum, my 10-year-old self would have loved this thing. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video, and thank you for continuing to support me on my NECA Godzilla journey, completing what I started. We only have 2 more figures left to go, 2001 original variant and the Shin Godzilla variant. See you guys next time. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone, welcome back to another figure review. My name is Matthew, as I'm shaking the camera a whole ton, because this is a very unstable table. Just kind of shaking it. I'm literally grabbing it with my fingers, and I'm shaking it. Anyway, today we're back with another figure review. Today we're taking a look at the NECA Monsters Godzilla himself, the video game appearance from 1988 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, or as you longtime viewers of the channel know him as, Game Godzilla on the Amber's Godzilla show. That's right. I would just kind of like to preface this before we actually start. This is not a very good condition Godzilla figure, as he's definitely been through his wear and tears. I mean, he's the second oldest of the whole collection, and I got him when I was a bit more of a rowdy kid. Basically, he's got a lot of scuffs on him, some actually missing parts, and some parts which are absolutely broken. So this isn't going to be a shining example as to a higher quality, very good in condition NECA figure.
And also, if you haven't watched the Concrete Jungle Kong figure, I'm currently sick, so I might be a bit sniffly throughout this video, might even cough or sneeze. So with that said, this is going to be a kind of a review of an old favorite of mine. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the figure. The one that helped start it all, the NES video game appearance Godzilla. So in case if you're too thick in the head to know what this guy is based on, this is going to be based on his appearance in the 1988 game Godzilla Monster of Monsters, in which that game he is an 8-bit sprite and you take control of either Godzilla or Mothra, and you're placed from planet to planet, facing off different enemies like Ghidorah, Mothra, ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, Gigan, the list goes on. And I did actually play the game via emulator, and I'm gonna say, it's an alright game. I think I would have liked it when I was a kid, but that said, it's definitely not a game I would have, like, absolutely just chokehold NECA to make a figure off of, like, make a figure of. Like, it wouldn't be like that. But for the video game adaptation that we did get into figure form, what did we get? Well, this is actually a base model as far as like the actual sculpt is concerned, reused from the 1984 figure, just redone a bit. And it is worth noting that there was a reissue of both the 84 and this guy that had updated sculpting work. Sorry, my apologies about that. Anyways, let's take a look at the paint and sculpt that we do have here. So for the head, we have some pretty pissed off red-orange-ish eyes with some blue, dark blue pupils as well for the actual, like, eyeballs themselves. For the eyelids, we actually have some black around them, which kind of gives the appearance of, like, almost like a video game illustration, or maybe just, like, mascara. I don't know, figure companies tend to do that sometimes. We have some incredible molding and sculpt work with, like, the multiple rows of fins on the back. Of course, mine are scuffed to heaven and hell and back. But it looks pretty good for what you get. For the sides, we obviously have the ears, which are dry brushed in a very well sculpted manner. For the fronts, we have the nostrils, the sides of the chins, and of course, we have the teeth, which are going to be individually sculpted and painted as well. And I have to say that this is actually some of the best mouth paint on a NECA Godzilla, in my personal opinion. The hinge color black is something I don't really agree with, because it does kind of stand out like an oddball. And we also have some pretty decently colored paints, like as far as the gum is concerned, on the roof of the mouth as well. So the sculpt work on the head is already pretty good. For the neck piece itself, which actually mine was actually stuck. I actually remember like commenting on it and then I broke it off camera, I believe. For the neck itself, we have some more like the bumps and grooves kind of going down. So it's based on the suit of the 84, just translated to the figure as far as like the pixels, and you can also see some blues that are like swatches of like lighter blues. Pay attention to those, because you might notice that they're a bit cubed, well, squared. That is because, again, because it's based on the video game version, it is going to feature these pixels, which are, to be honest, is a bit hit and miss as far as the actual execution goes. For these spines, they're actually going to be more of a lighter blue, and I do appreciate the fact that it actually goes from a dark black to a dark blue to a lighter blue. So it actually has some sort of mild gradation with it, as well as it also has, maybe this was scuffed on mine, I'm willing to incline that, so wherever there's like black paint like this, I don't remember if it was like scuffed like that, or if it was just actually like this from the get-go, because I didn't record my unboxing for this. I just opened it off camera for Christmas, so yeah. For the actual shoulders, again, we have some more of the pixelated detail, like the lighter blues, the kind of darker-ish blues, and then the black wash. For the front, we have like the circular kind of details, and then more pixels. That's definitely a scuff. We have definitely like some like grime and such, dust and lint in this thing. This thing is incredibly old anyway. More scuppage on the front of the abdomen, going to the sides where you can see the shoulders. More detail to be found with the pixels, and of course we have all the bumps and ridges in the skin, the blue paint that's on the actual arm itself, and then the claws, which are going to be, actually this claw is missing on mine, and I don't remember specifically how that happened, but if I do remember, actually no, that'd be that hand. My guess is just because of how much I used to roughhouse with these NECA Godzillas. It probably just got chipped and I was never able to find it. So, yeah. I remember actually for a while, I think this was on the Average Godzilla show, this guy's hand actually fell off. And I don't know where it happened to our hand since. And then there was like a moment in time where the hand was gone. So my guess is that if my memory is correct, which keep in mind the human memory is faulty, this was actually the reason why this fingernail is gone. So, but for the actual hand, we actually do have a lot of nice like colorization. I know this predates Bluey, but this really does remind me of the color scheme of the character. Or maybe I'm thinking of Bandit, her dad. You know, if anyone has watched Bluey, definitely raise your hand up because I know I have. And I hate to say it, I actually kind of enjoy the show. Anyway, back to Godzilla. The actual claws we do have here are very well nicely done. Shockingly still has the white color, as you can see here. This one's glued because that hand absolutely broke off as well. And there's also another joint that broke off, so it's not done yet. That said, moving down to the legs, where we get the big, meaty thighs. Like, these are some big kickers. For sure where Godzilla's big meat and gravy are. We can definitely see more of the pixelated detail coming down to, like, the bottom half of the thighs here. And then front side, we have, like, almost like a bit of an opposite effect, where the base skin, if we're going to assume that the lighter, this blue, is going to be the base skin. And then we have this backside, which has the darker skin. And then we have the pixels here, and then lighter pixels here. I kind of like that color contrast a lot. Of course, here we have the kneecaps, which are going to be kind of like folded in. And I like how they're just not like basically mirrored from each other. Like, this has different pixel designs than this one does. See that? That's interesting. And of course, just to kind of showcase the sides of the body, because I don't think I showcased them enough. Back of the legs, bit more of the pixelated detail. This back of the leg, there we go. For the actual feet, again, going to be featuring the claws, which aren't as scuffed as I thought they would be. Like, this one's almost like practically untouched, aside from these. It's just got a lot of dust and lint and grime in there, because, yeah, this thing has been through its fair share of battles with me. I used to, like, take this guy in the 54 and beat the crap out of this thing. Like, there was no tomorrow. That said, I definitely do think that, like, the sculpt work is still very well done, and it's meant to capture the 84 suit. Of course, it's not meant to be the NES Godzilla, because if that was the case, this thing would be radically different. But that said, we also have the this whole big part of the the spines, which are going to be a more this is actually the original sculpt work part, like these middle fins, which are meant to be more replica of the actual design, which in the actual NES game, he has bigger dorsal plates in comparison to his movie counterparts. And at the time, I think, like, even the 84 had very relatively smaller fins, so they had to really, like, go in and make new molds, which I'm actually happy with, and they're not too puffy, but they are pretty big and pretty malleable, although that could just be because of how worn down the rubber is. But for the actual detail, it is very well done, and I would have almost liked to see what this thing would have looked like on a standard Godzilla figure, not just, like, done with the whole video game aesthetic. But that said, we have all the, like, more triangular fins that are very well pointed. We have all these fins, which are also well painted, although I definitely do think that they are part of the 84 sculpt. Again, I don't actually own the 84 figure, and I do plan on buying it sometime. It's just a matter of actually finding a seller who's willing to willing to accept a decent price, because anything above $50 for a loose 84 figure, and you are officially a greedy person, at least in my opinion. But that said, these fins are really well painted, and I do like the pixels we do have here. The pixel work does leave a little bit to be desired on the smaller fins, especially this one, which is like the biggest of the smaller fins, if that makes any sense. Because here it almost looks like a cross. Which, I mean, hey, maybe you're just paying homage to the D-pad on the actual, like, NES. But, of course, you do get some more pixel detail in the actual fins themselves. And they are varied in color, which almost looks like again, like an 8-bit version of the actual tail. However, the 8-bit detail stops when you get to the base of the tail, which sadly is just your basic blue with the more darkened wash. But we do get some more pixel line details when it comes to the bottom of the tail, and it looks really nice, except for all the grime and dust. As for length, it's not a particularly long tail, but it does the job well enough. So overall, for the sculpt and paint, I can't really judge accuracy, because accuracy on something that is meant to be replicating an 8-bit sprite on an action figure like this is very subjective. So overall, I think NECA did a really great job at least adapting the video game the video game design of Godzilla, even though I think this is more supposed to be based on the more Showa era Godzilla. I definitely think the 84 definitely benefits with its retooling of the fins to be a lot more like the video game version. That said, I definitely think that there are still some problems. Like, for example, I think the pixels are something that works well in theory, but I don't know, there's just something off about them, even after all these years later, that, like, you can still tell, like, where it's sculpted as far as, like, the actual design goes, and it just looks weird having them overtopped with, like, hyper-realistic details. It just looks off to me. I don't know how to describe it. It's just obviously something that wasn't meant for it, but because we got this in the first place, it actually does look at least nice to look at. And I definitely do think that the tail transition is also a bit of a problem, and maybe the outer row fins could have been improved, which I think they also did on the reissue. Again, I could be wrong, because I don't own the reissue, nor do I desire to get it, unless if I get as a replacement for this guy. But that said, sculpt and paint, I'm actually going to give it an 8 out of 10, just because, like, not because of nostalgia, but because the sculpt work is absolutely amazing, even for an older figure like this, and the whole, like, paint job is really well done. I just wish I hadn't scuffed this thing that much over the years. Next up is articulation, and like I made mention before, there's actually a bit of articulation that I should probably address on this thing. But first, we're going to start with the jaw. For the jaw, we can open up and down, close in about that far, open up about that far. So very much a functional jaw. For the actual head, we can go, moving the neck piece, we can go all the way around, look up about that far, down about that far, and can rotate left and right, of course. But with the neck, we can actually go, again, another full 360, look down significantly, look up significantly, and because it's made of a more rubberized-esque plastic, it's a bit malleable. You can actually get a bit of, like, more leaning side to side, which is very well done. Something I also found neat is that when you look up, you can actually get a little gap, but if you close the mouth, it actually kind of covers up the gap a little bit. So it makes sense, because every time Godzilla's looking up, he'd most likely be roaring. So that is really nice. I don't think that was intentional by NECA, but it's there. So for the shoulders, we can go about that far up, that far down, can rotate a full 360 degrees, bend in with the elbow like this, as well as swivel with the elbow. a ball joint here at the wrist, which is going to be quite limited because of the size. So you can get a swivel and a little bit to the side. Just a little bit. It's not that much, but it is worth mentioning. This wrist also, by the way, still glued. The waist was never really that functional to begin with. So you can get a bit of like back and forth like this. And you can get a little side to side in a mild rotation. And I say, actually no, you can go with the full 360. Again, I forget like some of the aspects of these more older figures. So you can definitely get a bit of a like rotation. It's not like 62 level of hindered, but it's still, I feel like if there's a bit more clearance here, you could have gotten maybe like a bit of a bigger ab crunch. For the legs, we can actually go this far to the sides, this far inside, and go full 360 with the legs. As you can see here. A little tight on this one. For the knee, we can bend in about this far, straighten out about this far, and can rotate some. This one can actually rotate a bit easier on mine. But you might notice that I used the foot to rotate it. That is because a few days after it, I decided to be a complete moron, drop this thing from my bunk bed, foot snaps. I thought it was the ball joint. Nope, it's the actual ball peg. The peg itself snapped. So you can actually kind of see there's a bit of a glue seam right there that somehow works after all these years. That is some strong glue. Like, I'm impressed myself. But for the actual foot itself, you can go a bit forward, back, full 360, and a bit of a pivot. I am kind of noticing that there's a bit of a difference. Like, you guys can see that, right? And we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ball jointed segments at the base of the tail, which can go left, right. Oh, crap. Also, something I'd like to point out is that for some reason on mine, it actually pegs out right here instead of the ball peg itself. So just to kind of press that back in. For some reason, it's not going in. Okay, there we go. So yeah, there's that. And for the actual like bendy wire, you can actually twist this thing, which is very fun. And I do like the way it looks. Honestly, this almost reminds me of like the bendable Godzilla figure from Trendmasters. I own the NECA Godzilla. I intend on getting rid of it one day. But for the actual like articulation, it's average for a NECA figure at the time. Even then, like the 94 and 2014 could do about the same, if not a little more than this guy did. Say, except for the 2014 actually being able to look up like this guy can. But that said, I like this. I really like the way that this thing moves. Of course, I've done quite a bit of a number to this thing over the years, and I'm a bit more careful with my figures nowadays, say, except if you're for my cats. But that said, I do appreciate this figure having as much articulation as it does. Judging this on 2025 standards, I definitely do think the head and jaw are pretty good. The shoulders, a little stiff, okay, but they're still very well done. Wrists could be a bit more freed up. Same with the waist, significantly. Maybe a little bit for the knee and foot, but that's really all I'd add. So I would say for articulation, it also gets an 8 out of 10. Because yes, one could say it's outdated, and it absolutely is, but it moves fine well enough for me, at least. So there's that. And so for a brief size comparison, here he is with the NECA King Kong Concrete Jungle version. And it's the only figure I have on my person right now because, well, let's actually kind of get like a bit of a more back shot for these two. So yeah, they're definitely not in scale. They're the only figures I currently have on my person at the moment because I intended to bring them out here just so I could film their reviews. And, yeah, I would honestly say that this is not a great setup, but they're actually pretty interesting together. Like, this is a very interesting pair. You have this big, vibrant blue Godzilla and this much bigger, more pissed off looking Kong. again, I'm just calling it interesting. So, unfortunately, this is the only size comparison I can do, and I don't own the 84, so don't expect a comparison with that anytime soon. And, of course, comes the last part of this review, accessories, which I don't actually... This guy actually doesn't have any. But it's kind of worth noting that this guy actually came in a very fancy style box, a box that I sincerely miss. But it came in a box that mimicked the actual packaging that the original NES Monsters game came in. And it's so cool that that was actually their, technically speaking, the first time NECA actually got the rights to use a 5-panel box, as they called it back then, and I think they still do now, like, in their Godzilla line, because everything followed, like, the same clamshell Godzilla 54 from Bandai America packaging. And sure, they were fun, but they were kind of just getting a little repetitive. So once they actually got the okay, starting with the 62 and the 56 Godzillas, to actually make their own boxes, that's when NECA really started cooking. And unfortunately, that didn't really last long now, did it? But really, this Godzilla was almost like a testament to, like, what NECA could do as far as bringing in new pictures and boxes and such. And that was an awesome box. I really wish I still had it. If I get another one in the box, I'm definitely 110% going to not keep it in the box, but actually keep the box itself. There's no question about it. Which I honestly think kind of perfectly segues to the actual outro. Like, what do I think of this figure? Smacking my camera for like the billionth time. Sorry about that, camera. I think that this figure is really good. I do think so. It's very much of a one-of-a-kind piece, because I don't know if there's any other Godzilla merch out there that actually, like, is from the NES game. Its sculpt is really good. Its paint job is fun and creative. Its articulation, while very outdated, it's still serviceable and really expressive for what you get. And it just serves its purpose of being a fun video game adaptation of the actual Godzilla we saw on the screen into figure form. That said, do I recommend this in 2025? If you can find this thing for, with the box, mint in box, assuming that, for maybe like $50, $60, that's going to be your soft cap. Anything higher than that, no. Just plain out no. I definitely think that this guy is deserving of a memory down lane thing, and I'm perfectly happy that I own this thing. Even though this condition kind of saddens me, I'm still planning to get another one, and we'll see what happens. But that said, for my final score, I'm going to rate this guy an 8 out of 10. A very welcome addition into anyone's collection, regardless of how young or how old you are. Actually, maybe how old you are. How young you are, let's just kind of leave it at that, because this figure, if I could do this and this to my figure, plus scuff it to who knows how much, and plus get rid of a nail, yeah, your kid's not going to take care of this thing. You might as well have it. But with that said, thank you guys for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.
If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone, and welcome back to another figure review. My name is Matthew, and today we're back with another, well, figure review. Today we're taking a look at, well, continue our NECA marathon of reviews. We're going to be taking a look at the NECA 1989 Godzilla, the standard release, not the Biollante Bile attack, as we'll talk about in the other video. But that said, this figure, it's very interesting because this is one of the last Godzilla figures that NECA had put out while they still had the license, and was one of 2 last sculpts, this and the 2003 Godzilla. So, and then after that, we had the Biollante Bile attack and the Hyper Maser Blast variant, of which the latter I still need to get. That said, this figure is definitely going to be an interesting one to talk about, because I had previously stated that this one was my favorite of the bunch, because in my NECA rankings videos, This guy was pretty much like the definitive NECA Godzilla. While I still do stand by that, we're going to be taking a more critical look at this thing and really kind of putting the nail into it. So is it as good as I say it was, or is it just okay at best? Let's find out. So for the sculpt and paint, now for the first time in true high definition, I can safely say that the head sculpt on this thing, while it looks great from some angles, it definitely looks a bit off from other angles, which is kind of a common theme of NECA's classic line of Godzillas. Not trying to shame NECA at all, hell no. What I am saying is that NECA has a very, depending on the sculptor and the designers, just a very mixed result. I mean, that original 84 prototype from almost 10 years ago is definitely not what they would do now. But that said, for the head sculpt here, it looks really good, at least head on. The detail work on things like the nose and the facial structure just look really nice. And it has a very, very nice aesthetic to it. It's a lot less glossy than the earlier NECA figures, but you can definitely still see like it has some really nice wash and really nice detail to kind of bring out the finer, well, details, and it just looks really nice. Something that I do have a bit of a problem with is going to be the eyes, and I mean it's kind of minor, but this eye is kind of looking this way, and this eye is looking more straight ahead. And I didn't really notice this until now. So it definitely looks off when you have it like from the front, just because of the way it's painted. But aside from that, that looks pretty much fine. The actual, let's get a more closer look at the side. The side is definitely where it kind of has a bit of issues, because I definitely feel like the head is a bit too pointed upward. But that said, it still looks pretty nice regardless. We have a kind of like a red outline for the eyeball, and then white for the eye itself, along with some brown and black. So NECA really did their homework when it comes to the eye. Taking a look at the mouth inside, this looks incredible. The double row teeth are sculpted and painted really well, with the top gums looking really nice, where it goes into the peg hole for the atomic breath piece. And of course we have the little tongue in there, which they kind of did the similar thing with the 62 Godzilla, minus the paint, where it's actually on the hinge, which that I do really like. Taking a look at this other eye, we can see kind of more has the same thing, although I will say the paint application's a bit more tidied up on this eye compared to this eye, because the outline is a bit on the lower side, while this one pretty much has it about to a science. For the dorsal plates here at the back, 3 rows of them, can't go wrong. Has like a ton of detail here. Not much paint aside from like a dry brush or wash. A little fuzz. I have cats, so do expect to see a lot of fuzz here. But we do have, again, a lot of nice dry brush and like the waved detail, more like roughed up on the neck, and then kind of smoothens down with the line work. And that's something I do like about NECA. Here's a bottom shot of the jaw here, just in case if you're interested. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up about the head. So going down to the shoulders, we have quite a bit to talk about here. The shoulders in question have that paint, which are going to be primarily on this side and in the middle, while the black kind of like base color, or that's probably a wash, one of the two, is kind of like seeping through the crevices here, and almost look like the new trying to think, like 2 in what's the name of the I don't, you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but anyway, looks like 2 eyes together. There you go. Letter eyes, I should probably clarify. So that looks neat. And we do have some more like the detail kind of coming down here, a little bit of a black splotch, which I do find a little weird. But we do have some like more folds in the skin, which look more like the suit than anything else. For the claws, they are just kind of basically painted a very nice paint of like that very goldish brown, but it definitely doesn't look the best when it comes to like the shading, because there really isn't any shading. They kind of just slapped it on there, but it does do its job. Come back to the chest, we have more like the scaly detail, and it does look pretty good. Coming to this arm as well, as you can see with this claw. The claws are almost painted all the way, not completely, but you can definitely see what I'm talking about. Here for the thighs, which are going to be very big. And so let's just briefly showcase this part. The crotch itself. Anyway, the thighs here do look really nice, and I do like the kind of like black highlights here, because it very much captures all the folds in the skin, and it's clear that NECA understood where it was and how to highlight it. That's something I really do like. You can see all the scales that go down with the figure look practically immaculate, I will say. As for the kneecaps, they do look pretty nice. Standard oval shape. Can't believe I'm actually calling a kneecap nice. Hey, like your kneecap. Anyway, moving down to the shin area. Shin Godzilla. Waiting for that 4K release. It's coming this August, so I might cover that in a different video. Anyway, black highlights going down from the kneecaps to the actual shin cap areas, where we do get more like that black spray. And then we obviously have that hinge, which isn't as like noticeable. Well, it's noticeable, but it kind of matches color wise, although I do get a bit of paint access there. But we do have some more like the folds here, which are highlighted in black, as well as here as well. You can see all the scaling. And of course, the big chunky feet, which are going to be pretty roughed up, dirty looking. This actually has a bit of like subtle gradations for the base color to the actual claw itself. And it looks pretty, again, roughed up. Here at the bottom of the feet, not too much detail. We do get a bit of it, but it's not really by much. We have like copyright information from NECA and such. Toho Company Limited. Peg holes at the bottom of the feet. I find it interesting how it has one peg hole here, but peg hole back here. Interesting. Also, I never really pointed it out, but there is a bit of excess paint there, but because it's at the bottom of the feet, that's a bit minor. But now let's talk about these dorsal plates. This is beautiful. Let me get a good look. There you go. Beautiful. I'm just gonna say, no complaints with the dorsal plates here. The dorsal plates are really well painted, and I love what we have here. The frosted white tips to the gray base. All the shapes look amazing, and even the more smaller ones do have a bit of paint variety. It's so cool how NECA did their dorsal plates, and I really wish we had more of this, because they were sadly cut early. Regardless of who's at fault, if it was themselves or Toho's, this should have been, what we had more of. But anyways, actually getting a better look. It looks very well done with all the puffy dorsal plates. Mine are, I don't know if it's actually meant to be like this, but they are a bit warped. Well, some of them are. But you do get a bit of like folded with them, because they are made of like a more rubbery material, but it's not like flimsy rubber. It's actually quite durable rubber, although do keep in mind that they are still prone to paint chippage. And as we go down, we still get the dorsal plates, and let's just talk about the tail. The tail is one of the longer NECA Godzilla tails, and it's just so cool. It's meant to look like an S, which does kind of come in a bit of a price when it comes to articulation, as we'll discuss later. But this tail just looks awesome. Not only is it individually segmented, not like articulation-wise, but we do have like the black highlights really working their magic, like individually like segmenting the whole body. But we do get an amazing amount of like the more rough texture versus the more soft and smoothed out texture at the bottom. And then at the top, you have all the dorsal plates, which are painted towards the very end. A little bit messy, but again, that's the tip of the tail, to be expected. It just looks so good. And this is really what made me like the NECA 89 so much was that it was the most well done out of all the Godzilla figures they had released, because it was the most consistent. And that's honestly what I have to commend NECA for. It's that it had consistency. So really, for sculpt and paint, though it's not necessarily the most accurate, I would say that as far as the actual execution goes, this is probably the best executed of, I'm going to say it, the entire line. It's really well sculpted and really well detailed. I almost feel like I'd be paying this as a $50 to $60 figure, but in reality it's only like a $25 figure, at least was. But still, it's incredible to think that for a $25 budget, NECA was able to put this much effort into their Godzilla 89. And again, it kind of bums me out that NECA never continued or was able to continue it. I think they are still able to continue it, they're just choosing not to. But still, this thing is incredible. So for sculpt and paint, I think I'm going to give it, well, actually, let's go back. Is there a bit of cons? Well, I definitely think the claws could have been done a little bit better, and that left eye could have been done a little bit better. But that aside, those are basically nitpicks. But you know what? I feel like a 9.5 out of 10 for the sculpt and paint is practically perfect for this thing. So almost near perfect. So 9.5 out of 10 for sculpt and paint. Now for articulation. Hinge at the jaw, as you saw earlier. We can go open about that far, shut about that far. Ball joint here at the head, so we can look down, look up. We can lean from there to there, and we can go a full 360 degrees. For the neck piece, not the head piece, we can look down about this far, look up about this far. So you can actually, using the two joints, you can actually get him to look a little up because his eyes do angle like that. To the left, about this far, right about this far, and can rotate, I believe, a full 360 degrees. There you go. For the arms, which we're going to angle down the camera a bit. There you go. They're on swivel hinges as opposed to them being ball joints. So you can see there's a hinge, so you can go up about, try to push it that far, down about that far. And I think for a rotation, it can go all the way around. Okay. I did not remember it actually being able to go all the way around. I was always thought that it would be very limited. For the actual elbow, we can straighten out, go back in because it's on the swivel hinge, and we can go all the way around just like that. For the swivel wrist, we can go hinge as well. Mine's a bit stuck. It's a bit stuck sometimes. But we can go in about that far and bend out about that far. Can rotate a full 360 degrees. And for the finger claws, can go out and in. And because of the way the thumb's positioned, you can't really look like he's gripping, but you can kind of look like he's gripping stuff. So there's that. Set the arm back into position here. There we go. Now the waist. We can go, try to make him go as forward as he can. About that far forward, about that far back. Can rotate a full 360 degrees. Although again, do keep in mind that the dorsal plates will chip against each other if you rub them too much. So kind of align everything back into place. The legs, we can go out to the side, in, and can rotate a, not a full 360, but it's pretty close, at least comfortably. You could probably force one, but like I don't want to force it myself. So they are on that barbell style ball joint, so just keep in mind things can get out of line. Hinge for the knee, so you can go bent in, straighten out. A mild rotation, although my knees don't really want to do anything. Ball joints here for the feet, so you can go full 360 degrees, plus pivot and go forward and back. And now for the tail. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ball joints here for the tail. So this is kind of where I would mention the S curve. Pointed up, it looks great. Pointed down, not so much. Because if you're trying to get it all the way down like this, or straighten it out, this is basically what you get. And even then, if you were trying to like cover all the gaps, it's still kind of raised on the ground. So it's sculpted to be in this position. It's kind of like what they did for the Shin Godzilla, where it's meant to be like, and then mainly that stance. So if you try straightening that tail out, it's just going to look like complete crap. This, it's not as crappy as that, but definitely kind of leans a bit more to that. But you can still actually rotate the tail pretty nicely off to the sides without it looking super terrible. Trying to get into like a funky pose for y'all. But yeah, that aside, that should be relatively about it. Also, I would like to state that in my original reviews, I had falsely addressed that this thing was a bendy wire. Nope, it is entirely solid plastic. The 2003 variant was a bendy wire. This part was not. So I would like to apologize for that. That said, this is definitely going to be a more, how you say, very expressive Godzilla. Although it's a bit mixed as far as the range is considered. It has new engineering, like the swivel hinges for the wrist, and a fully ball-jointed tail as opposed to it being a hybrid tail. But at the same time, you can't really use those joints all too much, especially the tail. You can get it out to the side a bit more, but straightened down and leaning up. It's meant to be in one specific pose. And I feel like when you give an articulated figure a pre-posed fixed position, then that kind of ruins the whole like point of the articulation. Like at that point, you might as well have just had the whole tail as a solid S curve and just pegged it right into the butt. That said, the articulation for what you do get is really good, and in some parts very expressive, like the head, and I would even say the waist a bit, because it is a bit more freed up. The arms, decently expressive. Legs, maybe not so much. So in terms of articulation, it's fairly standard for a NECA Goji, just not the most articulated as far as the range is considered. And you can't really use stuff like the tail nor the legs. So with that said, I'm going to have to give the articulation a, what's an honest rating? 7.5 I feel like is fair. Very good, but not great. What's a Godzilla figure without some firepower? The SH Monster Arts Godzilla 1989 Spitfire version, which was an exclusive. Yeah, so basically this is a base form Godzilla that might not look like it comes with anything, but actually NECA was kind enough to package an atomic breath piece. I could have the wrong one just because this and the the Biollante Bile Attack Godzillas have the exact same beam effect. So I do apologize if this is the one from the Biollante Bile Attack, just because I have them both side by side on the shelf. But as you can see, it looks very, very reminiscent of the NECA V2 beam from King of the Monsters, but it is an entirely different sculpt. For the base of the beam, we have this white tip, which eventually kind of tapers off into like a spiral, and then it looks more like water, to be honest, but it has a lot of blue hues, like a lighter blue, a bit of darker blue in there, and some white highlights as well. And it has a very nice, beautiful spiral in there. Mine's got a bit of blue paint, like right there, but it just looks so good, and it honestly almost in some ways look like toothpaste. What's actually pretty cool is that this is actually a bit more of a harder plastic, so it won't sag, which, thank you, NECA. I guess this was their way of like addressing the sagging problem. But yeah, to peg it in, you're going to see this big long peg with a teeth at the bottom, like some teeth grooves. That is going to be the bottom jaw. And how you insert it in is you're going to see a very long insert hole into there. Insert it like this, and then shove it in, and then boom, you're pretty much golden glory. You're going to see obviously the bottom jaw. If you want it shut or it being more secured, put it in like this, although it does kind of weigh down the jaw, but it does kind of fit in there, not too badly. But yeah, there you go. So crap. So there you go. He's shooting the beam. So in my personal opinion, this beam looks a lot better than it does with the 62. Like as far as like it looking up, even though he's kind of doing that, he's looking straight forward and then shooting the beam downward, which is kind of what the Heisei Godzilla did, because he looked at his enemy. In this case, it's Biollante. So let's say pretend this hand is Biollante. He's looking at her and he's shooting downward, because that's kind of what the Heisei Godzilla did. So in the movie context, this does make sense. But that said, could the beam have been done better? Maybe. I'm really trying to struggle, like, what's so bad about the beam? There's really nothing bad about it. I will say it does feel a bit brittle, because, like, one good drop on the floor and this thing could be broken. Although this beam has dropped on the floor on me a few times over the years, and it hasn't really broken on me, so you know what? Maybe I'm wrong about that complaint. So I'm going to say beam. It's not like overblowing, like, oh my god, this beam is so cool. It's a serviceable beam effect that does its job and does its job well. There's just really not much else to it. And it's not, I'm trying to properly think how to rate this. I guess the only thing I would have really done is maybe give it a more, I guess, blue color scheme, because while it does have blue, I feel like it could have used a bit more of the darker blues, and that's really like nitpicking. So I'm going to say 9 out of 10 for the beam. And so for size comparisons, here he is with some other Heisei Godzillas that NECA released throughout the years, with their 1989 Biollante Bile attack and the NECA 1994 Godzilla from Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla. And like I made mention with the Biollante Bile attack, it's definitely going to be the same base figure. And actually, let's bring in this 1994 comparison. This is a very damaged 94 figure. You can actually see all like this gunk and white stuff on him. That is glue. Head popped off, and this thing has been through a lot of wear and tear over the years. So I do plan on skipping the review of this guy until I find a better 1994, which could happen soon. I don't know. Depends on a lot of different factors. Money, availability, etc. I have options, so there's that. But just to kind of like showcase the sculpt, this was their second ever sculpt for Godzilla. This was their second last. Really goes to show how much they've improved. Like, look at the dorsal plates, for example. Awesome. And also, just for the whoop-de-doo-gee of it, here's the tail length. Such a skinny, puny tail compared to this. Am I right? So, there's that. To also say. Also, if you're wondering, the beam effect does not work with the 94 sculpt. I've already tried on Burning G and Reactor Glow. It doesn't work. And just because I mentioned the beam, here the beam is compared to the 2019 Godzilla. So it definitely looks similar. It's not the same. It's very much a different mold, because the King of the Monsters or Legendary Godzilla at large had a more plasma-like beam compared to the more Dragon Ball laser beam of the 89 Godzilla, even though the 89 Godzilla technically predates Dragon Ball, because Dragon Ball I think was 90s. Anyway, so before I kind of get my overall thoughts of the figure, I would also like to state that I am planning to buy a Biollante, not like the Monster Arts Biollante, the one that I would have to pay a whole kidney for. but in actual, like, probably smaller scale Biollante, the Bandai vinyl, probably a bootleg of it, but still, some form of Biollante to go with this guy. It's not going to be in scale, but it's going to be a Biollante rep. I just want an official, well, not an official, but a figure of Biollante herself. But that said, what are my overall thoughts on this guy? I think that the 1989 Godzilla is a home run. I still think it's that good. I think that the sculpt and paint is beautiful. The articulation serviceable and does what it's supposed to do and does it pretty well. The accessory is pretty damn sweet. And overall, for what was a package for like, what, $25? You could have went way wrong with this. I am honestly so happy I own this thing. And it's so cool that NECA actually bothered to take the time to make another Heisei after the 94. But, or I guess 84, because the 84 technically released after the 94, whatever. Do I recommend him in 2025? If you can find this guy for, I would say, under $50, go right ahead. It is an absolute snag of a deal. I've seen a few pop up for resale where I am from time to time. But that said, your mileage will vary on this guy as far as your standard for 89 Godzillas. I mean, Heisei Toys just came out with their 91. And big asterisk here, the 89 and 91 are close to or about the same design, so you could actually disguise this as a 91 and that is an 89, so maybe you want it there. Anyway, as for my final rating of the NECA 89, I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10 for this figure. It is really great, and I'm really happy I own him, even after all these years. So with that said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, shaking the figure as well. With that being said, hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're continuing our journey throughout NECA Godzilla history, with today's review going to be the 1989 Biollante Bile Attack variant of the, well, 89 Godzilla. This is one of two of NECA's last figures of Godzilla before they sadly discontinued the line. And basically this is obviously a repaint of the 1989 figure, which we previously took a look at. So I'm going to be a bit more brief when it comes to the actual, like, sculpt and paint, articulation, and size comparisons and accessories, because for the most part everything's the same. But if you haven't seen that review, I promised in this video I'm going to be as informative as I possibly can. So if you're wondering why he's all covered in this green, almost neon yellow looking acid, well, again, we'll talk about that in just a sec. So for starters, let's take a look at the sculpt and paint for the head. And as you can see, again, why does he have all this yellow green bile on him? Well, in the film he goes against Biollante, a giant plant hybrid mixed in with his DNA and human DNA. And one of Biollante's powers is that she's able to spew this green gunk out of her mouth, and in a way kind of counters Godzilla in a weird way. It's been a while since I watched the film. I just had to rewatch it in general. And Godzilla does get covered in it, in this stuff, and this is what the figure is depicting. So essentially he just gets, to put it simply, he gets barfed on by a big plant monster. That's what I tell my family members when they look at this thing and say, why is he covered in yellow stuff? Anyways, for the actual detail, I will say that the detail work is still immaculate. If you've seen the 89 review, you already know that this is my personal favorite of, like, the original Heisei era of Godzilla suits, and one of my favorite sculpts in the NECA line in general, and that still holds true. The 89, like, as far as the yellow bile on the face, We're going to have it mainly caked on here for like the nostril area as well as the nose. The nostrils themselves actually don't really have a whole lot of them, but we have a bit of like I want to say, a dark base, because you can kind of see around here there's a bit of like darker green. If you know the King of the Monsters poster 56 Godzilla, that's kind of what the same color is. Probably not the exact same, but an identical color. And then they have a more of like a lighter green over top, which for its application looks honestly pretty stellar. You're gonna have to forgive all like the fuzz and stuff. I have like pets, so yeah. As you can see as well for the eyes, the brown makes a return with the black pupils and the slightly more blood red outline for the eyes, which are themselves are more pure white. And unlike the original, these eyes are actually pretty well painted. Well, they were pretty well painted to begin with, but like head on, the other one looked a little goofy. This one actually has some pretty nice paint application. For the mouth, pretty much the same thing, more of like a dark brown, purple tinted-ish, very ish mouth going on here with the tongue and the gums, which are really well detailed, and the double row teeth that are painted and sculpted individually, which are really done really well. For the actual like bile, going back to the bile, we have pretty much all over the cheeks. Not around Godzilla's eyelids a bit, because you can kind of see there's a bit of like a gap where there's like the gray charcoal color and the actual bile itself. But on the forehead, and pretty much on the head in general, it is caked in this stuff. Where the spikes start is where it doesn't really have it, which I guess accuracy be damned, because it was kind of a low lit scene anyway, so you can't really see a whole ton. Then again, the bile does glow. For this side as well, more like that dark green shows up, so you can definitely see that a bit more with like how the streaks go down to the face, and it definitely gives the impression of like this is runny liquid over Godzilla. That's what I do like. It gives the illusion that it is runny liquid. If I did have a bit of a complaint, is that as far as like the neck segments go, it doesn't really blend or mesh well together. Now, what I mean by that is if you look at this side, you can see that it obviously cuts off, but then here it's like super thick. Here it's kind of where it's a bit thinning out, and then here it goes back to thick. So you can kind of see that it's trying a bit to align itself correctly, like thanks to the articulation, but it doesn't really do a great job at that. So that's a bit on the iffy side, but something you're also going to see is it has a bit like speckles of like the dark and light paint of green, and it actually is overshined, overfinished, sealed with a glossy spray. So usually I was kind of like skeptical about them bringing back the glossy paint, but as you can see, like on full display here for the neck, because you can actually see it on the bottom jaw and the neck here, it's actually pretty well done. And given the fact that this Godzilla was wet in the scene, it definitely lends itself to be at least somewhat accurate. The shoulders here have a bit more of the faded kind of color. Like this definitely looks more like a Nickelodeon type green. Like I could literally bring this to the Kids Awards and say, oh, Godzilla got slimed or something. We have a bit less of the gunk here for the actual arm, right arm, I should say. We have a bit of green here, more yellows-ish, and then we have this long streak of it, more fuzz. And then right here, we obviously have the fingers, which for the claw paint is actually still a little bit basic, but then you got like the greens to really help enhance it, which I do like. Going to the chest itself, which we can see like it's just caked in this, because you can see all like this yellow here, and then it kind of like seeps down to where the green is, and again those like little speckles of yellow make a return, and it looks really nice. This is also kind of what I was talking about here, because spoilers for the articulation, even though it's not really a spoiler, this is like a cut in the joint or in the sculpt for a joint, and you can see that there's like these 3 long pieces of Bile that are running down Godzilla here, here, and here. And if you try and align it, it doesn't look 100% flush. This part's cut off. And if you try centering this one's also going to get cut off. So it's like, how does it go? So it's a bit more on the confusing side. Also, good luck even trying to align anything here. So nothing really aligns, which I guess would also technically be a problem because it's supposed to be pouring down. Because if they can nail that, I'm sure they could have done there. But again, the detail itself still makes a return. I do like the kind of black spray that they have here for the thighs. But of course, the gloss is really what steals the show for this time. And of course, the more like the globby stuff, the bile. I don't want to keep saying bile. That just sounds weird. Bile. Anyway, but yeah, the bile, I guess I have to state bile, all the spray little gunk pieces are on the upper legs. Not so much on the lower legs. We used to get a little bit, which I guess in hindsight is kind of right, because if you're getting sprayed from up here, some parts are going to hit your lower legs, because that is where it got sprayed in the film. And of course, for the claws on the feet, they look nice too, with a very glossy finish, as you can see here. And for the spines, since I didn't really cover those, the spines are not painted until you get to the next segment, and from there, much like the original, these things are done beautifully. We do get a bit of the more bile color here for a few of the fins, so this one has quite a bit of the bile on this part of the fin, some gray or green hue on this fin, and then some more here and there. And then it just kind of goes with the glossy nature of the figure. And it just looks, again, the part when it comes to the little speckles, which is more of what would hit the back. Because not much of it would have hit the back if Godzilla's getting hit from the front. Which, in hindsight, I feel like this could have been a really cool hybrid. You know what I'm thinking? They could have painted all of this blue and have it he's just about to fire his atomic breath when he's getting shot. Maybe they couldn't do that because they did have a very tight schedule when it came to the last two figures. Because if I remember correctly, chronologically speaking, these came right at the end. But having a better look at the segmenting that's done here, you can actually kind of see that the black does make a bit of a return here. And I will say that it's done a little bit better on this one, probably because the gloss does make it a bit more popish, I guess. I don't want to use that word. But if I also have something to say, it does seem like the fading is done a little bit less on the spines compared to the 89 original, so there is that. But I would say just one more look at the foot, just having a bit of a better frontal shot, side shot, back shot. No, not in that sense, you perverts. And this side, below, and above. There you go. Just want to make sure I get everything down to a science. So, like I said, I'm going a little lighter this time, but for the actual repaints, because this is what it is, it's a repaint of the 89 Biollante Bile Attack, I will admit that this thing is actually pretty sweet. Do I think that the paint has some problems? Yes. Something I actually forgot to point out is the seal, the glossy seal, does seem to fail in some aspects, because as you can see with the neck, there's a clear cut where it was actually sealed incorrectly, and then once I moved the joint, it kind of broke. So or that's maybe just the plastic rubbing together, and that's just an oversight by NECA. So, but in the sense that this thing was more of a rushed figure, I would still say that NECA did a really good job with this thing. Granted, it's not perfect. I think the alignment of the paint itself doesn't really add up in some aspects, because the legs especially and the shoulders. But that said, the paint application where there is new paint, it's really good. And I honestly think that NECA did as most as they could given the time frame and circumstances they were in. As for like if I prefer this over the original as far as the looks department, I'm gonna say no, because it's more scene specific, and I definitely think that the more I guess traditional Godzilla definitely appeals to me more, but this is still really good on its own. So for the sculpt and paint, because it uses the 89 detail and base paint job plus new paint plus gloss, I'm going to give this thing an 8 out of 10. Very, very good. For the articulation, literally nothing has changed. So for the head, let's actually kind of scroll up here. There you go. For the jaw, we can close up, open about this far. We can do a full 360 degrees at the head. We can look down, we can look up. Pretty much the same movement we can get with the original. The neck on mine is a bit more stiff and definitely does not want to move because something clearly happened, like as far as the joint tolerance is concerned. But we can still look up some, down some, and can rock it a bit, so that is good, I guess. The shoulders, there we go. We can go up, down. I would still be cautious about things like paint chippage and sealage because I'm not noticing anything. You can actually see some pixels because it uses like printing paint, which I do find pretty cool. And it can go have a rotation, but again, I'm not going to display it on full force here just because I'm worried about the scuff, because once it's scuffed, and I can't exactly run to Walmart and get a replacement. It's not exactly 2020 anymore. Although I think this thing was exclusive to Target. Was it? I can't remember. We have a bend at the elbow, as you can see there, as well as a mild swivel. Again, not wanting to screw up anything. Swivel hinge for the wrist. We can kind of go backwards, several mil forward. So yeah, you can kind of see that the seal definitely kind of gave way a bit. And then we can hinge at the fingers. It's actually go like that. Waist can go a full 360 degrees. Plus can actually kind of rock back and forth. Hips can go out to the side, into the side as well. And not a full 360 degrees rotation, but can go pretty far back as far as that cut is concerned. We can get a very stiff, my goodness, hinge at the knee. There you go, very stiff. And a mild rotation, a ball joint here at the foot. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 joints, and a not bendy wire there at the tail. And I mean by not bendy wire because they used to say that it was. No, it's not. It's literally just a solid plastic piece. So with that said, as far as the articulation is concerned, you can get a pretty good amount of articulation for this thing. However, there is kind of one problem. You can't really use a lot of it when it comes to like the front of the figure, well, the top half at least. You can use a lot of the tail articulation and maybe to a degree to some of the legs where there is some leg articulation, but because this thing is designed to look like he's being shot from above by the Bile, the articulation, as soon as you do stuff like that, it might start looking weird because like it starts breaking things, and it's kind of meant to be in one specific stance, like maybe like this. Maybe Godzilla's looking down, was getting like, ugh, stop it. Or he's like literally like looking up like this. It doesn't look 100% coherent as far as the actual articulation would go. And I mean, technically speaking, none of the Godzillas would be 100% coherent because they do break the sculpts. But this one is an special example. So some of the articulation you can't really use, but the articulation itself is still really good. So I'm going to call it an 8 out of 10 for this one. It's not as usable as something like the original, but still pretty damn good. Now, as for accessories, he comes with the exact same beam effect as the original 89 does,
And again, I could have the wrong one because they look so friggin' identical. It does look a bit like the 2019 V2, doesn't it? Anyway, it's the exact same stuff. It's a spiral piece of white plastic with painted blue over top, and it's meant to look like the heat ray that he shoots out in the film. And all you do is you're going to see a peg hole in his mouth. You're going to line it like this. Make sure the grooves are facing the bottom. The website or the promotional pictures had it incorrectly placed up like this. That's not the way you want it. You want it facing down like this so it kind of sinks into the teeth. And there you go. You have Godzilla shooting the beam. Now, admittedly, it's cool, I think, and it's, pretty much harmless. It's a very stable beam. You could have this thing displayed on for hours and it won't sag, and it's actually pretty light. So I feel like NECA definitely saw like the issues with the 62 Godzilla having such a big heavyweight beam effect that was made of a more like saggy plastic, and a flexible one at that would sag down and kind of weigh down the figure itself. This is actually very lightweight and doesn't really sag anything. There you go. Anyway, I'm gonna be honest and say that I feel like the beam was definitely a very cool inclusion from both figures. But that said, could this figure have maybe come with something else? Maybe. Maybe like, and this is gonna be like kind of a weird take, maybe a stabbed hand. Yeah, because in the movie, I think it's his right hand, it actually gets stabbed. So what I feel like they could have done is, and if you actually seen the Super 7 Toho Ultimates 89, you know exactly what I'm talking about, is that in the film he gets stabbed with one of Biollante's vines. So I feel like maybe having like a stabbed hand could be really cool. But alas, NECA was under very tight schedules for this thing, and but yeah, it's essentially just this. So I feel like the beam still is about the same. I'm gonna say an 8.5 out of 10, just because like the beam, it's basically just the same thing as it came before. So, and it serves its purpose. You shoot it out of Godzilla's mouth. There you go. So for the comparison you guys have probably been waiting for, here he is compared to the 89 standard version, and as you can see, these things are practically night and day. Not literal in the literal sense, but as you can see, they're the same mold. First off, they're the same accessory. But that said, I definitely think that the original is a bit superior than the repaint, and that's mainly because of one thing. Presentation. I love how unique this mold is, and I love how unique the paint is. Or, well, not the mold, the paint itself, the actual design and cosmetic of the paint. But that said, it has very limited appeal given of how scene specific it is. So I definitely think when it comes to a Godzilla figure, someone's going to pick this over this because they're going to be like, what the hell is this thing? Versus this one where it's actually more uniform. It actually looks better as far as the actual design of the beam itself, the figure itself goes, being a lot more darkened, a little bit more matte as far as the actual color scheme is concerned, and it just looks more like the standard Godzilla one would think of than this. Not trying to say this is a bad figure, not at all. And for the last bit of a quick comparison, here he is with the other green NECA Godzillas in the collection with, or well, I guess of all time, with the 1956 Raymond Burr Godzilla King of the Monsters poster version and the NECA Lootcrate Reactor Glow Godzilla Glow in the Dark exclusive. And as you can see what I was talking about as far as like the color scheme itself goes, it's kind of clear that these two in some way, shape, or form kind of like wrote off each other as far as like the color scheme itself goes. Because we have some like lighter yellows and darker greens. Maybe not the exact colors, but it's definitely very similar. And for my final thoughts, overall, what do I think of this figure? I think that this figure is actually a really well done version of the 1989 Godzilla. Do I think it's one of my favorites? I would say it's close. It's definitely up there,
but it's definitely not like the favorite. The original 89 just has a bit more of, I guess, a better display presence. Even though this one is more eye candy and I love my vibrant colors, I just find myself going back to the original more than its repaint. But that's not to say that this repaint is bad. Its sculpt is really great. Its paint job is really nice as well. The articulation, when you can use it, is very great as well. And its accessory is awesome too. Do I recommend it? Only if you are like very interested in the 89 Godzilla. But then again, this thing is very much out of stock and they don't exactly plan on any reprints anytime soon. So your mileage will definitely vary as far as like availability is concerned, but I would not recommend anywhere over $60 for this guy. If you can find it for a good price, definitely snag it up if you can. That said, it's very scene specific, so I don't know how much people are actually going to like this thing. But with that said, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe. Wait a minute, I forgot my final score. I personally rate this thing a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's not the best of NECA's catalog, but it's definitely up there with some of its greatest, I would say. But that said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. I don't know why I did this. Peace out, everyone. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone. Welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're taking a look at the NECA 1995 Burning Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. Now, if you're looking at the release dates of these videos chronologically, you might have noticed I skipped a figure. And you probably already know I have it, but I skipped it. That being the 1994 Godzilla. There's a good reason. My 94 is screwed. Blatantly screwed. It is one of my oldest figures. I think it's like my third oldest. Because I remember it was first the 54 NECA, then the NES NECA, then the 94, then the 2014, and then those like bootlegs and the 10-pack, you know what I'm talking about. It's like one of the most viewed videos on my channel, so thank you very much. Even though it was like years ago, still, thank you. Anyway, yeah, that 94 had an issue with its head where it did that thing where it like popped off, and back then I didn't know how to treat my figures correctly, so I glued it, but what happened was the glue ran through the body, fused the head and neck together, went through the chest joint, and then like ran down the tail, sort of the backside, and then like fused the backside with the tail. So essentially all of this running down and to only the back portion of the tail was all fused together. Not to mention his jaw was also shut because there's actually a tiny little hole where the jaw connects to the actual head. So that's why we're not doing the NECA 94 review, because even though I did one for like the NES and the 54, those at least still function. My 94 doesn't function anymore. It does not articulate very well, and it's not meant to do its job. So during sometime this year, I don't know if it's maybe this summer, this fall, this winter, I don't know. I want to put my more money where my mouth is on other things right now. I do plan on getting a replacement because I do have some options, and yeah, that said, you might have. So yeah, that's just kind of to clarify why I'm not doing the 94 review, just not for now. Not to mention, I don't want to do any like sort of like half-baked review on that figure, so that's gonna have to be on the back burner until I can get a replacement, mint or used. As long as the articulation works, I'm pretty good with that. Anyway, back to the 95. So this is going to be obviously based on his appearance in the 1995 film Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, and took me, I think, like 7 years to hunt down. I got this guy, I think, at the beginning of 2023, and this guy was released all the way back in 2015, I believe. Again, it's all I believe. So, I believe. You know that song from Shrek? Anyway. Yeah, so it's going to be quite a
Very long ride, but it's finally time we take a more updated HD version of this figure. So with that said, is this figure as good as the movie is, or unfortunately, is he just gonna have a meltdown whenever I see him? Let's find out. So for the sculpt and paint, we're gonna take a look at the head here. And as you can see, the head is actually, I'm just gonna, how do I say it? The body itself, from head to toe, to the tip of the tail, to the tip of the dorsal plate, uses the mold from the 1994 Godzilla, which essentially already off the bat makes this inaccurate. Because even if the 94 figure was accurate to the 94 film, which it's not, this actually is a completely, well, I don't want to say a completely different design, but it is a different overall design to the 94 suit. See, the 95 suit was a bit more bulky than that of the 94 suit, had different dorsal plate arrangement, and was all translucent orange. Well, most of it was, at least. While they did keep the translucency, basically everything that was copped off from the 94 figure is brought back here. And really, as far as the sculpt is concerned, there's really not much differences. In fact, it's, again, pretty much the exact damn same thing. What's going to be the difference is going to be in the paint job. And I'm pleased to report that the paint is actually, big asterisk, not accurate, but very, very pleasing. What do I mean? Well, let's take a look at the face. The eyes are going to be a fiery red with some nice yellows and blacks. For the actual pupils and irises themselves, the face is going to be sculpted pretty good, and I will say, again, it's not necessarily accurate, but it's certainly quite a really nice overall look. I will say that the actual head looks a bit elongated. I think it looks more better from the front. Like, this looks more like a mean Heisei Godzilla, while this looks a little like Heisei, but it almost looks like some sort of other animal. I'm trying to, like, think. Doesn't this kind of look like some sort of, like, I'm trying to think of I'm thinking of a meerkat. I don't think that's the right animal. Like, this looks like another animal. This looks like a certain animal, doesn't it? Just imagine the ears were pointier and bigger. Anyway, but yeah, the actual head sculpt is actually pretty well done for being one of the I think the second ever sculpt they did, which we have some very fine details here of the little scales that kind of start here and then fan their way back to the back of the head. For the nostrils, they're not going to be like super duper detailed. They're just not like as prominent as later NECA releases. Opening up the jaw, which mine is a little slack jawed. I mean, that's okay. We have double row teeth, which are going to be individually sculpted and painted. The upper teeth are going to be more prominent than the bottom one for obvious reasons. The gum paint is actually pretty well done. The tongue is more on the long and narrow side, so if he like raised up his tongue, it would just kind of look weird. So I will say the tongue's a bit of a distraction just because of like, I feel like the tongue should just be overall a bit bigger, but that's, I guess it's serviceable, yay. So yeah, closing his mouth, we can see that the gums do have a very prominent part of this figure. Like, it's clear that NECA wanted to give this guy maybe a bit more of a, like, not a snarl, but definitely have more of the gum exposed, or this was just a big, massive paint job issue. So, again, I don't own another 94, so I can't really compare to one. But something you're going to notice about the head is just how blue this is. Like, shockingly, for a burning Godzilla, he is very blue. And this is because the original 94 Godzilla had a blue paint job. It had a very blue shiny finish, and that's what this figure kind of adopts. So you're going to see the ears, which are nicely and pointy, and then the head, which is going to be all sculpted very well, at least as far as detail is concerned. Next is the where the translucent plastic begins, and as you can see, this whole piece is going to be actually sculpted in a translucent orange plastic with black and blue paint over top. And I can tell you it's that because if you pop off the head, see actually just where, there you go. As you can see, it's all orange in there just with
the black over top. So with that said, we actually have a few streaks of orange, almost like lava. I like what we have here. It's definitely, again, not trying to be accurate, because this figure was doomed to be not accurate as soon as it kind of left the concept phases of being just a 94 remold. But it looks really nice regardless. Maybe not so much here, where we do have a bit more like green and blue mixing together with the orange. It doesn't look necessarily coherent. I feel like maybe that could have been tightened up even for 2015. But this looks at least still very eye candy and very nice what we have here. The scaling is a bit more on the softer end, because keep in mind this was more of NECA's earlier takes of Goji. But of course we have the folds in the neck, which look really nice. Also, I want to kind of reiterate that this is the original release, or one of the earlier releases, not the poster box variant where it is a bit more matte in terms of its paint job. So if you want me to track down that, that's going to be like nearly impossible. Anyway, back to the body here. So the chest is going to be, again, rather soft in terms of detail. We have the front side, which is going to be kind of more rectangular-ish, and then we have the sides of it, which are going to actually feature some diamond-esque plating on the dorsal plates, the scales, which are actually really well done. The arms here are actually going to be done very well and look very nice. We have like a lot of orange infused with the black and the blue. It very much almost reminds me of Halloween. Like, this almost looks like some sort of like Halloween Godzilla. Ooh, I know it's like literally June, but who cares? You can celebrate Halloween whenever you freaking feel like it. If I want to show up to the Christmas party dressed as Freddy Krueger, I will absolutely go to the Christmas party dressed as Freddy Krueger. You do not freaking shame me. Halloween is freaking awesome. Anyway, yeah, so it's going to be the shoulder and the bicep just joints. We have a bit of translucent plastic here, and then kind of runs down to like the bigger sections where we have this one streak and then this bigger patch. And something I do like is that if you angle it the right way, they do somewhat connect. I can't believe I'm also saying this, but it actually connects better than that of the Biollante Bile attack, where it looked like it was pouring down, but then it like gets cut off. That's not actually what we have here. This looks actually kind of more coherent. We'll say there's a bit of blue thickness there. Anyway, for this bicep, because it's not actually the same across both of the shoulders, is that, yeah, we do get like this, almost looks like an N, doesn't it? And then this looks like a inverted C. I'm not crazy, right? N and C. What does that stand for? That's your, let me come up with one right now. Nicolas Cage. There we go. Nicolas Cage. Trying to just wing it right on the head. Anyway, so we can see more of the orange translucent plastic. The forearms do not use the translucent plastic. They are essentially, so to speak, the 94 hands straight up. We have the scaling making a return with the blue highlights, and the hands, which are going to be pretty damn well sculpted and painted, just to show you the detail. And the painted claws, which actually have some shading, which have a more like eggshell white to a more blue kind of tip, and blue base, and it looks really nice. Again, not so much accurate, but I do appreciate what we have here. Going down to the crotch, where this looks more like basic fire, like cartoon fire. Fire, is that you? We have some like streaks going down from the dorsal plates, which are all translucent. Might as well talk about those in just a brief moment. We have like these streaks going back here to the dorsal plates as well. And about the dorsal plates, again, all of them, say except for this one, are all going to be made of like this very gummy flexible plastic. Like, this was when NECA was using very more cheap end plastic compared to the more solid rubber plastics that they'd later use on things like 89, 2003. And it looks and feels actually at least decently malleable and looks really good. Like, this for what was $20, damn good, like awesome. The actual like fins are going to be in the center a solid black to blue, and of course the outskirts of the fins were translucent orange, and I do like what we have here. If I did have a bit of an issue, it's that the strips that they connect them by are also going to be translucent orange, but the body itself is mainly just the black, so it definitely looks a bit color iffy when you actually look at it from the back, so there is that. This dorsal plate we'll talk about in just a sec, but it's mainly as a transitioning point to the rest of the tail. But for the actual like thighs, like the legs, we have a lot of like nice flare and fire kind of flaring up, as you can see here. This looks really nice, and I do appreciate what we have here. We have like the folds in the skin almost looking like the suit, and I kind of wish there was more of like the folds to make it look more like the suit. I mean, you kind of can get them here, but it doesn't really look, again, 100% coherent. But as you can see here, there's definitely like a shiny finish, which I guess kind of makes sense because the 94.5 Godzilla, sorry, was actually kind of wet in some scenes, so you could maybe cop it off as that. Moving on down to the actual knees, again, much like I said, the translucency ends where the forearms do and where the lower legs do, and essentially they are, again, the 94's legs. So that means if you broke your 94 and you have an extra 95 laying around, you could actually salvage this. So for the actual knee, it's solid plastic, so it doesn't have any of the orange, but it does have a nice blue flare with all like the different scales. For the feet, they're gonna look pretty well. They're not as big and bulky, but almost look like shoes, don't they? Probably just ruin your whole perspective on this figure from this review going forward, huh? Anyway, the claw paint does look, again, pretty good, and I do like what we have here, probably just because I'm a sucker for blues. And for the actual dorsal plates, like I mentioned for the tail, this is going to be like a transitioning point instead of an abrupt change, so it's like a hybrid tail, sorry, dorsal plate. And from here on out, we do get a bit of orange paint, but from here on out, it's going to be mainly the standard white, which, as far as my personal opinion, I like this kind of color change. Let's focus in, there we go. All of them are going to be frosted white with the blue base. And the detail, while soft, is still really nice for what you do get. I do like all the segmenting with the darker lines in between the segmenting actually being painted differently, so you do get that as well. And yeah, it's not a particularly long tail because, again, this was one of NECA's earlier figures, and again, their 2014 tail was absolutely stupid long. But for what you do get for the 94 Godzilla, I think that the sculpt and paint overall, well, let's talk about that. Accuracy, no, this thing is not accurate. And let me just say, I don't really think this thing could have been accurate unless NECA really paid attention to the movie and was merely trying to find a way to get a burning Godzilla out onto the market. Do I think they did a good job? Honestly, yes. Why? Because despite its flaws using the 94 sculpt, because let's be honest, the 94 sculpt is a very dated sculpt, even though this was one of their earlier figures, as I said, for the billionth time, the color, I can't help but feel like I love the color contrast between the bright orange and reds versus the dark black and blues. I guess it's just because I love orange and blue, so having a orange and blue Godzilla just really kind of seals the deal for me and just is something I actually really like. So maybe it's just because of my personal preference, but that's aside, I think that the colorization's actually done very well. Maybe not so much like transitioning where there's blue to black, because there's definitely like some obvious color differences between the forearms to the upper arms, the head to the neck, and of course the knees to the feet, so the knees to the leg, plus the tail to the body. As you can see, there's like a lot of blue caked in there. So maybe not so much in that aspect, but so I will have to dock off some points for that. But my personal opinion for what was NECA's like more original take, I think that this thing could have been a whole lot worse. So for sculpt and paint, I'm gonna have to give this thing a 8 out of 10. Not bad. I think it's at least really good. Well, actually really great, I should even say. Let me dial that to 7.5. It's really good. An 8 would be like a really great out of the park, and then we would get like 9, 10. I'd say this, guys, it's comfortably at a 7.5. At least in my personal opinion. It's somewhere between 7.5 and 8. So your mileage will vary, but for me, I say 7.5. Next up, articulation. The whole reason why my 94 Godzilla got ruined. So for the jaw, we actually have a hinge, so we can close up, open up about that far. As you can see. For the neck, or sorry, for the head, you actually might have saw this, but if you don't know, you might think that it just plugs into the neck on a ball peg. That is not true. Kind of. See, it plugs into the neck sleeve, as yes, I said sleeve, on a ball joint, so we can go full 360 comfortably, maybe without popping off. There we go. We can go left, right. Let's actually put it to the front. We can go left, go right. We can go up some, down some, of course. There we go. And we can spin it at least to a reasonable degree. And that is because the head actually kind of starts splitting a bit, because it starts like expanding the socket thanks to the way that the neck is done. And you might also notice that there's a bit of a groove. There's a bit of a sleeve back there. Well, this is the sleeve, this is the groove. And basically what that allows you to do is kind of make him look up a little higher. So in case if you have an in-scale Destoroyah figure, I think maybe the 8-inch Bandai would work with this guy. You can actually get him to look a little bit higher up, which is the reason why this thing was constantly falling out, was because NECA didn't really think about this head joint potentially interfering with the actual articulation. So that said, this thing is more of like a big collar for him, and there's like a big long rod. If you want a better look, go to my 95 Reactor Glow review from a few years ago, and you'll see. Anyways, or I'll just cover it in the later review. So for the actual neck piece, we can go up, down, and side to side. And using the two joints, we can get a lot of great range. This is actually very nice. For the shoulders, we have ball joints here for the shoulders, which we can go full 360, out to the side, in and out like this. We have a bit of a hinge right here, although you're not going to get too much out of it. I think you can actually get a little bit more out of this one. Yeah, there we go. So you can get a little bit of range. For this elbow, you can get a little bit of range like this, out to the side, in like there, and full 360 degrees. For the wrist, which we can go a full 360, and it's on a ball joint, there we go. For the fingers, which we can actually go in like that and out. So this is the first time that they did the finger hinge, which I'm glad that they actually later did return those for like later releases. We have a ball joint here at the waist. It's actually a barbell style ball joint, knocking over the head. And of course the tail popped off. Why not? Anyway, so yeah, there for the waist. Let's try to assemble this guy. Okay, I guess not. Fine. You're armless, or you're headless for the rest of the review. Okay, there you go. Do keep in mind that the spines will bang up into each other, and though they are made of rubber, they are still very malleable, and this one's kind of coming out of the socket a bit. There you go. So for the weight, the hips, we can go a full 360 degrees. However, do keep in mind that there is kind of a gap here just to accommodate that articulation. So depending on how you look at it, it's not going to necessarily be the best. That dust. Damn, I gotta give this guy a bath. I didn't actually realize. I mean, it's inside the joint. You didn't really expect me to see that. Also, by the way, can't really get like a whole lot of crazy poses with the hips. We can go a little bit out to the side, just like that. We can go bend in like that for the knee, bend out like that for the knee, and can rotate here at the top of the knee. It's a singular hinge, and you can pivot a little bit with the foot. Not too much range, but we can definitely do a full 360-degree rotation. Come on, don't get caught on the knee. There you go. And pegging the tail back on, as you can already see, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 ball joints, which the tail loves to pop off on mine. I don't know what the previous owner did, but you can kind of straighten it out if you want to. Go up. It almost acts like a hinge, although it's not a hinge. You can actually go like side to side with it. It's like one of the more smoother and more tolerant joints, I would say. And then the rest are just kind of loosey-goosey. And then, as you can see here, all this is pure rubber, so there's a metal wire that pops through there. My 94 already has its tail popped, like the wire itself popped through, so that's why I need to replace that piece of crap. I mean, it's not really crappy, I did that to myself, but still. That said, I'm not that person anymore, so only more people in this world actually believed in change. Don't you all think that the world would be a much nicer place? Maybe then we wouldn't have so much toxicity on Twitter. Anyway, as you can tell by the actual sculpt, or the articulation, sorry, it is exactly carried over from the 94 Godzilla, which means all the issues from that Godzilla will be returning here. Do I think that that's inherently bad? Well, yeah, it just kind of ruins the experience of having joints constantly popping off, especially if you got this guy used. So there is that, but overall, is the articulation at least functional? Yes. It's actually one of the more movable Godzilla figures, because the 2014 wasn't really able to look up all that much, but with all the 95 articulation, you can actually get this guy to look a decent amount up. It's more like this way, not like straight up like the 94 monster arts, but it's at least serviceable. It's very good. It's very serviceable. Very nice. Do I think that it's honestly like super good as far as the articulation? A little bit. Arms are really nice. They're probably my favorite part about it. Waist is actually really well done. I think the only thing that could have been used a little bit more work was the tail and maybe the legs. But if those two were fixed, guarantee this thing would have gotten at least a 9 out of 10. But for me, I think that this thing deserves a comfortable 7.5 out of 10. And we're going to actually bump up the sculpt and paint back to an 8. There, that's my final score for both of those. And for some size comparisons, here he is with some other Playmates. Well, some Playmates, not other Playmates. You're not a Playmates. You're a NECA Toys. Here he is with some Playmates Toys Godzilla Kong figures with the Battle Roar Godzilla Evolved and Kong standard versions, which, while I do like these two, can we bring this back? And here he is with the other 94 sculpts that NECA made with the 94 standard version and the Reactor glow. And like I was trying to make mention, you can see the glue like seeping down, and it just looks ugly. Plus, if you want to see that bent or the popped wire, I think it's somewhere on here. No, that's somewhere on here. I'm trying to find it. Almost bent the whole figure down. Yeah, you know, I don't think I can find it, but it did pop on me a few years ago, and I'm trying to find like where the actual... I think I may have sealed the hole. Oh, well. But yeah, this wire is busted, so this whole figure just needs to be put out of its misery. And once I do replace it, I don't really know what I'm going to do with this thing. And finally, here he is with the only 6-inch scale Destoroyah figure I have. I know, laugh at me all you want. The Playmates Destoroyah from the Toho Classic Series line. Rest in peace. And so overall, what do I think of this figure? I think my thoughts were pretty clear, but it's nostalgic in a way, because I remember wanting this guy so much as a kid and going to like great lengths to hunt this guy down, but unfortunately those great lengths were not great enough, and they were just too far or too close. But eventually I did find a secondhand listing, snagged this guy up, and I walked away a happy camper. That said, is the figure perfect? No, far from it. It's actually one of NECA's more weaker figures just because of the way it was produced and the fact that it uses one of the earliest sculpts in the line. Then again, this figure was one of the earliest releases. If NECA had done this figure like from the ground up in its more like recent years, like maybe 2018 to 2020, this figure I 100% guarantee would have blown the competition out of the water as I spit all over the place. But on this figure's like current own accords, is it dated? Absolutely. Is it worth going back to? I would say if you are interested to see NECA's history. Because these days, I feel like with Heisei Toys on the market producing classic Godzillas, because they haven't announced a Burning Goji yet, nor like a 94 Goji. I think they only ever done like a 91 Godzilla. I would say wait for them to make one. If you really want a 6-inch scale Burning Godzilla, wait for them. Monster Art's way too expansive. Bandai figures, take them or leave them. There are soft vinyls. You can do whatever the hell you want with them. But as for the NECA, I would say pay no more than $60 for this thing, loose or in the box. I paid about $30. I think I walked away a happy camper. But as for my final score, I rate this thing let's actually go a midway. Let's go this one. 7.75. I know that sounds weird, but it's right there. It's right in the middle between 7.5, which would effectively be 7.50 if we're using like decimals, and a full-on 8. So there you go. It's like midway through those two. I really cannot decide. It's right there. But with that said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, smash that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. With that being said, hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're back with another NECA review, continuing our line through the chronological Godzilla movie order. Today we have the NECA Lootcrate exclusive Godzilla Reactor Glow figure. If you guys don't know, in March of, I think it was 2018, I could be wrong about that. Basically, this figure, along with some other stuff, I think one of them was Alien or Predator. Again, my memory's very hazy. Lootcrate put out like that month's subscription, and this figure was a part of it. If you don't know what Lootcrate is, basically it's like a subscription-based service. They deliver like a package to your door with like X amount of stuff in there, and for that month, and that month only, was this Godzilla. And I wanted to just make mention that yes, this is the legit version. I got this thing back when it dropped, a little after, I want to say. And I didn't actually subscribe to the service. I was just like, well, if this is what I'm missing out on, it's what I'm missing out on. And lo and behold, I ended up getting it. Yeah, apparently my mom found a secondhand listing, scooped it up for me, and there we go. So thank you to her. Massive, massive, massive thank you to her. That said, this is going to be the only Godzilla in NECA's catalog that is a flat-out exclusive. Yeah, even when they say things that are a Target exclusive, I think what they really mean to say is only for the first release, because Burning Godzillas, from what I know, did show up at various other stores, not exclusive to Target. Maybe Target was like the main seller of it, but it wasn't necessarily an exclusive forever. But that said, this was like a one-and-done release, and the exclusivity was definitely based on the subscription service of that month. So if you didn't order it then, guess what? Even if NECA had the license now, you are at the mercy of the aftermarket. And I mean mercy when it comes to a noose around your neck, pulled tightly and tugging you away. That's how tightly to the aftermarket this thing is. Like, that bad. Prices are flying up more so than other NECA Godzillas out there. Maybe in rivaling that of the 12-inch tall one, which would actually be about up there. But anyways, I'm getting off track. Is this guy a worth it addition, or is this guy just all flair, no show? Let's find out. First up is Sculpt and Paint, and like I probably should have mentioned, this is going to be a remold of the 1994 sculpt that this is technically, so to speak, the third and final time that NECA used. And not counting reissues and box variants, this is essentially the third time that this was used. And if you're wondering, it's not exactly just burning Godzilla but green. It definitely gives off that vibe, but there is something really cool about it that I feel like I should mention. And spoilers, it's the translucency as I spit everywhere. Anyway, for the head, as we can see, the eyes are a little mismatched. This one looks a bit more corrected, being pointed this way. Looks like my camera itself actually got a little screwed up. Anyway, there we go, adjusting it. The eyes here, this one's looking more towards the front, while this one's looking more towards the right. His right, not our right. The face itself is going to retain that signature longer-headed sculpt with the actually really nice Heisei Godzilla look, like more towards the front. The details do make a return, and mine's a little dusty. I should probably rinse this. Oh, wellers. That said, this figure does still feature a lot of nice detail for what you do get. The double row of teeth make a return, as well as upper dual rows of teeth. The gums on the top are really well done, and the tongue, though it's still the slender tongue, I don't really like because it looks more dragon-y-esque than the Godzilla, because like I feel like if they kind of shrink down the size of the teeth and then allowed that more space to be sculpted in with the tongue, that would look a little better. But as you can see, the tongue is still very well sculpted and very well painted. Got a little axis paint on the hinge, but that's okay. The teeth are actually painted and sculpted individually with some mild black highlights, as you can see. That's just the base color of the figure pointing through, which I don't know if I showed this in the last video, but here's the bottom jaw, as you can see. And for the eyes themselves, going back to the eyes, you might notice that instead of red, they're green. So essentially they kept the base color almost near the same, except where there was red, there's now green. It still has the orange and black, but it's primarily that. Also, something you're going to realize is that the head is a lot less blue. I think this was just due to the fact that like the blue would potentially overshadow the green, as we're going to talk about, because this figure was mainly meant to be a green based figure, which going to the neck piece, which again is going to retain that more collar-esque appearance, is exactly what we have. Straight up green. This whole green piece, which I'm actually going to rip this off and actually show you because I have popped it off before. There we go. Don't worry, it's not like over. I mean, it's a little damaged. Anyway, yeah, this whole thing is going to be translucent green. That is really cool. And it's going to have some, I imagine that's probably just scuffage from the figure, like going like this all the time. But as you can see for the actual neck sleeve, we have a lot of nice green parts. Doesn't it not look like a nuclear power plant or the shape of one? That is cool. I know that it's completely unintentional on NECA's part, but that is really cool. So all the black that you see is mainly going to be painted on, with the cracks and crevices being the green, and they're going to have pretty much the base color we're working with here. So as you can tell, the ridges and the scales, they look nice, very well detailed. The dorsal plates with the big one down here and then leads up to the back of the head, so back itself, that looks great too. We have a bit of like wavy patterns. This one almost looks like an M. This one kind of looks more like very dilapidated lowercase h, because then you have like this and then it kind of curls down. Anyway, yeah, so back assembling this guy back together, because his head does pop off easily, but like I've kind of grown a bit of a tolerance to that over the years. For the chest, big patch of green. Like this almost looks like something out of Ben 10 or Green Lantern. fitting because Godzilla and Kong did end up crossing over with the Justice League in that one comic line, and then they're getting another apparently. I don't know. So yeah, that's going to be all of this. And then we have the return of the black here. Then we have obviously the dorsal fins, which might have a bit of black on them. I don't know if that's just like Axis paint. I never really tried scraping it off before, so I probably shouldn't screw with it any more than I have been. Anyway, for the shoulders for this and this, which are going to be only translucent, it's going to be pretty much identical to the Burning Godzilla, not exact, but as you can tell, it has a lot of nice different molded detail and just looks absolutely great. For the forearm as well, it does kind of retain the blue-esque, but it's very dialed back. I really got to give this guy a wash. Who knows, maybe I might remaster this, a remaster of a remaster of like a billion different remasters, whatever. For the claw paint, as you can tell, the claws are going to be pretty much the solid blue. And here's where we kind of have a little bit of a dilemma. See, at first I wasn't necessarily too keen on this, but over the years I've come to appreciate like this more lighter blue in contrast with this very vibrant green. I don't know about you guys, but I love this blue. I will say maybe the blues needed a little bit more shading because, I mean, we do have a bit of mild colorization. Like, you can kind of see some dark blues in there, although I'm 99% confident that it's either been washed away over the years or that's just the black peering through the blue paint and giving it more like a purple, dark blue effect. So it's kind of more, I don't want to use the word translucent, but kind of worn down to the point where it looks a little see-through-ish. You get it. Anyways, yeah, for the hands, going one more final time for the hands here. They look great, all the different scales we have. Let's talk about the dorsal plates before we go on a tangent. The dorsal plates are going to be the same mold as we've seen already in the gummy plastic, although I will say these ones feel a little bit more sturdier than that of the Burning Godzilla. And they are molded really well. We have the black charcoal black base with the kind of neon green over top. This dorsal plate's a bit broken. Not broken, but just out of place. That's kind of an issue. Oh well. We have this big triangular piece. Almost looks like some sort of logo. Maybe it is. So this big triangular logo at the bottom. Maybe this is Godzilla's superhero logo. Anyway, the black makes a return, of course, here for the more chest, stomach, abdomen region. And then here we have some more splotches of the green going down to the actual hips, which are going to be very, very interesting because we have this large line and then all like these little series of big splotches that are kind of bled through by little lines. And this one is, I've always found interesting. Does this not look familiar? Godzilla for Smash. Come on, Sakurai. I just gave you like a $10 million idea. Probably even more. There you go. So we have all these splotches of green on the Smash Brothers logo on his left leg. And yeah, we have this big section that's actually missing if you just have the base figure in its neutral pose, which we'll talk about in articulation. All of this translucent plastic, you can see also just kind of roping around here, just to give you guys a better look at the translucent plastic splotches, because the whole thing is essentially painted on. You can actually kind of see where it's starting to scuff a little bit. I kind of regret opening this now. But as you can actually see through the leg joint, the whole thing is transparent. It's say except for these two pieces of the leg, which are going to be the lower knee and the foot, the calf area, which are pretty well detailed. Like, this is honestly, like, look at this. Look at that blue. That is beautiful. I do love the blue choices they picked. I will admit that personally, I think I would have at first liked to have seen a green on green, but then again, green nails would have almost looked like a bootleg, which is funny because AliExpress is flooded with bootlegs of this guy. So if you want a secondhand version of this guy, know who you're buying from, look at the reviews, look at the images. If you have to, go to collectible stores and just ask if they have this figure. If they don't, well, say let me. Anyway, I actually did see one in mint box. Kind of regret not buying that one too. Anyway, yeah, so we had the 4 toes, 3 at the front, and then 1 mildly towards the back, which I think the Heisei Godzilla had it more towards like all fronts. And it does have that bit of a blue hue. So where there's not translucent plastic, there is a blue hue. Where there is translucent plastic, there is no blue hue. At least that's the impression I'm getting. Anyway, going down to the dorsal plates, we can see that one transitioning plate is still there, along with all the other mini dorsal plates. And it kind of goes off into the the standard colored fins. And as we can see, all of them are individually sculpted and painted. I don't really play with this tail that much just because, like, I don't want this thing to break. But yeah, just looking at it, we have all the crisp details making a return. I will say there's a bit of a weird difference as far as, like, the paint application here and there. Looks a little iffy. But looking at the bottom, looks really nice with all the smoothened out details, and then the more roughened up details more towards the sides of the body. So, and one more look at the bottom of the feet. So, one last look here. Here. Down, sorry, from above. Down. And from the front. So, that is going to be the Lootcrate Reactor Glow Godzilla sculpt and paint. I'll be honest and say, I definitely think they did a pretty damn good job with the actual detail and paint with what this was. Although keep in mind that since this was released in 2018, because keep in mind around that time we also have the 60, 62, a little later we get the 64, things like the KOTM line in 2019. So this was like right around that time. And as far as sheer quality consistency goes, he kind of falls a little short. Not because of his like absolutely horrendous sculpt. No, the 94 sculpt was actually a decent Heisei mold. For 94 specifically, a little less, but for a generalized Heisei Godzilla, it was pretty damn good. But as for this being a more 95 inspired mold, even though this is not meant to be like any particular design for intents and purposes, it's a green burning Godzilla, I'll admit and say that while I do prefer the way that the burning Godzilla did turn out, minus the head, I will say that the burning patches definitely hold this guy pretty well up. And I do like what we have here. That said, I would personally say that my biggest gripes are going to be the scuffing. And that's merely because that kind of leads me to believe that the figure obviously wasn't designed to be like purely translucent. And honestly, if I were them, I just would have gone full translucent. Like, screw the paint. Let's go full translucent with this. But really, the only non-translucent pieces are this, the forearms, the lower legs, and the tail. So, at the very least, I will say it looks the part. It looks great. I don't really have a whole lot to complain about it, so I'm going to give this thing an 8 out of 10. Next up is articulation. So first up, we have a ball joint here at the head. And again, like I made mention, we're going to be a bit more brief. Ball joint here at the head allows for a bit of up, bit of down. Popping off the head, we actually have a bit of a groove, which I actually tried to seal a little bit. That's all dried up nail polish. So I did do a bit of customization of this guy. It kind of holds well a little bit more now that it's, it feels a little tighter, but then again, it's still prone to like popping off if you force it. Neck has a ball joint here. Well, it's a barbell style ball joint plugged into the neck through the head, through the neck. So you already saw it, but you go a little side to side. Also, I think I forgot to point out the green does look a little cool at the front of the neck, like he's about to fire it. So there's that. The ball joint here at the shoulder is pretty sweet, where we do get a fair amount of movement. As you can see, a little bit of resistance, but that's okay. So go out to the side, in. Swivel hinge here for the bicep, which, there we go. Little up and down like that. Hinge for the elbow, which can go like that, like this. and swivel all the way around. Very tight though, so there is that to mention. The plastic used is definitely not the more malleable, soft type. For the wrist, we can go like this, side to side. It's on a ball joint, by the way. Hinge for the fingers, so we can go close in, close out. For the waist, we can go a full 360 degrees, along with some more kind of like back and forth motion. Although do keep in mind that even though they are transparent, the black parts are painted still, so they can be prone to paint chippage. And funny enough, there's actually, I forgot to mention this, but there's actually like a bit of an area where it's kind of cleared out in the folds to allow a bit more articulation. There you go. So there's that. Also, I would like to make mention that my hinge on this arm is a little loose. I tried fixing it up with nail polish, but it's not doing me any favors. So there's a ball joint here for the hips. As we can see, it goes all the way around and a little out to the side. For the knee, we can go like this, like that, and pretty much swivel, I think effectively a 360, but like I just don't want to push this thing right now. And you can actually go a little beyond. Look at that. I guess because of all its soft plastic. And of course a ball joint here for the foot. A couple ball joints here for the tail. 1, 2, 3, 4. And a bendable wire for the rest of the tail. So for the articulation, again, third time we'd be technically seeing this. Second time we're talking about it as far as the chronological remaster reviews go, because I am skipping out on the 94 intentionally. If you were wondering why, basically that figure has been fudged up by my 12-year-old self, and yeah, that figure is toast and I'm looking to replace it. With that said, this figure on its own is pretty damn sweet. It's got a lot of joints and I do like what we have. However, the plastic used is definitely going to be a bit restrictive. When I rotate things like the shoulder here, I can see I feel a bit more resistance than something like the Burning Godzilla, which may have had a bit of a softer plastic used. So there is that to mention. And as far as like the posability, like as far as scuffing is concerned, that's also going to be posing a little bit of a problem. How ironic that pose is a problem. So there you go. I don't really have much else to say that hasn't been said, because effectively it's the exact same. Engineering, quality, maybe a little different, but the amount of joints, the exact same. So for my rating, I'm going to actually say 7.5, just because that elbow hinge, I actually got this out of the box, so that's not my fault. It was mint in the box, I opened it, and it was like this. Yeah, 7.5. For gimmicks, welcome to my bathroom. That's why it's a bit more echoey. So we're going to be showcasing the glowing feature, which I don't know if my camera can actually pick it up as well as it used to, because this is a different camera. So I'm going to hold this guy to the light for 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And now we're going to quickly shut off the lights, and I forgot to turn this one off. Look at that. Look at that. That is awesome. So there you go. All the burning patches do glow. Maybe the nails should have glowed, but hey, this is awesome. So there you go. There's the glowing feature. It still works after nearly, how long has it been? 7 years? That's really impressive. Like, honestly, that is incredible. So for the gimmicks, do I think that it glows vibrantly? Yes, it absolutely does. That said, I do think that the glow-in-the-dark feature maybe could have used a bit of work as far as the mouth is concerned. Like, why not make that glow? But the quality of the glow is actually pretty good. I don't know how long it lasts. It really just depends on, like, lighting conditions, how long you charge it for. Because if you just like do like 1 second in the sun, okay, there we go, let's go inside, it's gonna wear down pretty fast. So it's quite literally a React charge up. So I also feel like maybe the nails could have lit up a little bit, but it's very vibrant and very cool. I just see a bit of missed potential, so I am going to dock off a point for that. But that said, 9 out of 10 feels appropriate for this guy. And so first up, size comparisons. Here he is next to his brethren, the 95 Burning Godzilla and the 94 Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla Goji. And as you can tell, he's essentially an identical version to him, but he's not exactly 100%. See, as you're going to see with things like the actual burning patches, he's got a little bit more of like a blocky, kind of clean cut versus this one where it looks more like what we saw on film. So it almost looks like this one has more radiation than this one does. But that said, in my personal opinion, and this isn't like bashing the Reactor glow in any way, I think I personally prefer the Burning Godzilla over the Reactor glow. And honestly, I think that all just has to come down to is mainly presentation. I like the translucency on this guy a bit more than the Burning Godzilla, than the Reactor glow Godzilla, because this guy feels just right as far as the translucency versus how opaque it is. This one is straight up opaque. Like, the only reason I knew this was translucent was because I shone a light through it and it came out the other side. Very mildly. So, as far as the quality of the burning patches go, I am going to have to give the edge to Burning Godzilla, not to mention it just feels a little bit more, I don't know, it feels different. I guess because of those burning patches. But again, that's not to say that the Reactor glow Godzilla is a bad figure in any way, as we'll discuss in our final thoughts. And this guy, his neck is fused to his body. So, there's that. And here he is with some SDCC Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah Battle Box set exclusives with the Godzilla and Ghidorah, which translucent Godzillas that are green, let's go. And overall, for my final thoughts, what do I think of this figure? He's not bad, even though I've said that who knows how many times. I enjoy him. I do. I love this thing, honestly. Is he perfect? Again, no figure is going to be perfect, and this guy's certainly no case. He's, at the very least, a very serviceable exclusive. That said, the sculpt is reused from the 94 mold for the third time, so your mileage will vary on the 94 mold, being reused once again. The articulation is very good, although a little bit more restrictive thanks to the plastic and the constant scuffing on places like the legs and the arms. And his glow-in-the-dark feature is going to be his main selling point, and I do think that alone is at least good. That said, does that warrant a purchase? I'm going to say maybe not, because like I made mention, this thing is rare, very rare. And maybe I'm hyping it a bit much, but with how rare common NECA Godzillas are, like how rare standard releases are these days, because they were made in like select batches, this thing is definitely going to be the very hardest one, the hardest one to find of the 6-inch line. So let's assume you find this guy for maybe about $60 to $70. I feel like that's a fair resale value for what is effectively a 7-year-old figure. Is that good? I would say so. But that said, I really only recommend that price if you find this guy mint in the box, undamaged, unopened. If you find it opened and they're selling it for that price, don't even look at it. Only if it's in the box. That said, I'm going to have to give my final score of this figure an 8 out of 10. That said, that's all I've got for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel as I've said in the intro, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.